All right, it is the beginning of our work session. Two topics on the agenda, affordable housing discussion and Shoshone water rights discussion. I guess we'll start with the easy one. Affordable housing.
Of course we will. This is a conversation, and hopefully we can have a pretty, I hate the word robust conversation about what we have to do to get ourselves in a position to have a strategy and really move forward with affordable housing initiatives here in town. And this item was put on the agenda, I think, Mayor Pro Tem Hanrahan brought it up several months ago. We applied for a grant. We have since been notified that we received the grant for some planning assistance and to get ourselves in a position where we can formalize an affordable housing policy. Nicole, Community Development Director Centeno, in the formal sense, and I met and kind of walked our way through what we thought was going to be the steps necessary to get from point A to the end, which is a good housing strategy and plan. And we basically came up, and you can see it on the screen, but working, with the first step being a housing needs assessment, some community outreach, draft housing assessment and plan. And then there's basically three things that we have to update along the way. Once we kind of have some idea of where we're going to head, we have to update the comprehensive plan. We have to update Title 16 in the town code, which is subdivision regulations, and then update Title 17, which is zoning. We have, and Community Development Director Centeno can talk more about it. When it comes to the building side of things, we have to be very cautious of doing anything with our building code because that triggers adopting new energy efficiency codes and building codes, which, correct me if I'm wrong, we're on the 2018 or 19? 18. The last version increased the cost of an average house by somewhere around $25,000. The newest version adds another $3,000 to that. It's hard to talk affordability when just your base house gets more and more expensive as we go with all these energy efficiency and building changes that they're making to seal the houses up, et cetera. It just gets extremely hard to put together a reasonably priced house. And so we're trying to avoid changing anything in our building code so it doesn't trigger us having to move to the newest version of the overall building code. But once we get those three items basically updated, that gets us to the final point of having a defined housing strategy and a plan. So that's kind of the long-term game. And as we talked about it, we're probably in a position where maybe this time next year, we'll be in a position to be done with everything that we have to go ahead. I can tell you that right now we're working on getting the RFQ put out on the street for the housing needs assessment, and that will, get that piece of it started where we can start putting some pencil to paper of what we actually need. And then we'll have to go ahead and do some community outreach. We're hoping that we can coordinate with the community outreach that we're going to do for the GOCO grant related to community parks so that we can kill two birds with one stone in some respects with that community outreach, because in a lot of respects, we're going to be trying to reach the same people. And so if we can, do both at the same time, I don't think we'll be able to do all the sessions the same, but if we can do both at the same time, it'll be a benefit. Because again, it's the same kind of group of people.
Well, if nothing else, somebody's passionate about one, but passionate about the other, we get more people in there overall, and then there's gonna be overlap.
Yeah.
That they didn't see necessarily.
Yeah, And, when, as we talked about it, the school's gonna be a good resource, because they're gonna know who's struggling from a housing perspective, from their, student body population. It's also gonna help us with the park side of things, but that will kind of be one of our main community outreach locations, as, outside of, trying to do something at Heyday and some of the other events in the parks in particular. But with that, and part of the reason for the conversation this evening is we wanted to talk about a little, one, what you all think we need to do in terms of what our housing strategy should be. We have some barriers within the code right now that makes it a little hard for us to do certain types of low-income housing or affordable housing, that we have to work our way through. But from your perspectives, what do you want to see at the end?
So I guess I should back up a step. My
You
intention,
already started it.
my intention is for us to come up with a set of policies. It's been my experience as a member of this group that we bring up affordable housing due to something incidental, whether it's code changes or other things. It comes up, we talk about it. We think about some stuff to maybe do next, but we never actually make any progress towards an outcome. And with all of the other changes that are going on in our town, with the new water plant, with some of the bigger developers that we're gonna be talking with, as well as what's going on in our larger community within Garfield County, and Western Colorado, and some could say the nation as a whole. This is the time for us to be proactive and establish such a policy so that we don't have to turn it into a firefight in 5 years because we didn't. That's my goal.
Okay.
I think I don't have a bias towards any one outcome. I just want us to have a mutually agreed upon finish line, and then we can work towards getting there. And that's what I had asked Jim for.
This is kind of the first step in that. Is getting us moving down that road.
And that's just so everybody knows, is in alignment with the community lead priorities for the year of 2024, which I'll mention in the board comments as well. There's a bill that's being passed this week, I believe Thursday, in reference to housing. So they are really pushing to have municipalities having their voice to be heard, and it's good timing for us to start having this conversation for sure. Having said that, we are looking into economical development for the town of Silt as well as commercial. Potentially having the bridge built that's going to connect both sides. What comes to mind for me is thinking about perhaps coming up with a zoning approach, which could be just one of the options. But it's just really crucial for everyone in the board to really express how they feel and what their concerns are before we design those policies. But I think zoning could be a good start, potentially, but that's just my thoughts. Throwing it out there.
When you say zoning, anything, can you offer anything more specific? Are you thinking more mixed zoning use cases? Like, do you have something more specific in mind?
Yes, I do. When I talk about zoning, I'm specifically talking about certain areas maybe designed to have some kind of affordable housing when developments go into that portion. I would feel a little bit concerned about creating restrictions on existing properties and pricing. I would steer away from that. But I mean, for new developments, if we can assign certain zoning to potentially have assignments for affordable housing, is that something that's even feasible? Does it make sense to anyone? I don't know, whatever you guys have in mind, I'm just trying to.
Joe,
find out how.
I'm still trying to.
Because I think the biggest challenge with it is that, I mean, builders, their end game is to make money, it's not to provide a cheap place for people to live. And so it's trying to find a way to do it and not have it be employer subsidized housing, which turns into, like, we've had conversations in the past, that doesn't necessarily.
That doesn't work, yeah.
By definition, it's not affordable housing because they have to, there comes a form of indentured servitude.
Exactly.
If you change jobs, you lose your home.
And there's things though, maybe doing things like if we could give some breaks on some of the different stuff. I mean, obviously, we don't want to necessarily give breaks on our tap fees and stuff, because we need that to pay for the water plant. But if we can give, if there's some things we can do to help with certain costs, that would help reduce the cost for people in those areas. With some affordable housing things, that's a possibility that can, but it's a big challenge, because you have things that are intended to be like, I mean, the tiny homes, you think, oh, wow, tiny homes, that should be affordable housing. Well, it's not really affordable housing over there. That's not what it's not what it is. That's not what it turned into at all. Now a huge opportunity might be that area, over by Heron's Nest. Cause they've talked with that development, they talked about doing some things. But I think one of the things that I don't wanna see in our community is I don't wanna see a barrio / ghetto / whatever you wanna call it. I don't wanna see affordable housing area turn into, I think that people should be able to have an affordable place to live that's still surrounded by the positives, the other nicer things, because that way it lifts the whole community up versus having an area that's, yeah, we got an area that's affordable housing, but it's kind of looked at, it's almost, I'm not saying that people would, but it almost, that kind of happens. And we don't want to have the projects or like you have in the big cities or some of that kind of stuff. I just don't think that's what we look for.
That's not Silt. Silt is diversity.
Exactly.
We empower diversity.
It's
Yeah,
an important point though, because there are quantitative elements of price and making sure that developers still want to build here. And then there are qualitative elements. You know, making sure that it's consistent with our culture, with our emphasis on diversity. I think those are important aspects of
One
it.
of the successful things I've seen with that is partnering with groups like Habitat for Humanity maybe, and things like that. Because they have sweat equity into their home, which makes it affordable financially, but yet they're putting in time and things like that, because and that's a key thing, because we have several homes in the community that were Habitat houses that when you're driving by them, you wouldn't think, oh my gosh, that's a Habitat house. It's just another house in the community, which is what I think the goal should be.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw something in there. First, town of Silt, we're kind of limited to where we're gonna go. I mean, the only place we're ready to go is north. Can't go east, we can't go west, and we're not gonna go across the river. But that being said, I think affordable housing is gonna be great. We're gonna be limited, I think. Affordable housing is gonna have to end up being something like the center townhomes. It's gonna have to be multifamily. It's not gonna happen in a single family home anymore. I don't see it. Cause I went and talked to the lumberyard today just because I knew we were gonna have this, and I sat down with Gail, and I've been building with him for 30 years. He said, right now, you're not gonna get a single family home for under 400,000. It's just, the cost is just out of realm with all the subs and everything else. But you can do multifamily, you can get that for, $200 a foot, you can get that way down because you're sharing walls and whatever. That's where I think we're gonna have to kind of focus on, because unless a miracle happens, we're not gonna do. It just isn't gonna happen single family. I think it's gonna have to be something in the center townhomes. Even those out by the roundabout wouldn't be bad if they were for sale. They'd be great, 2 and 3 bedroom, houses, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom. They'd be affordable,
Yeah.
or you get the Habitat for Humanity. They were affordable. We built all of those up, 16 between, up in that area, there's 12 of them, I think, 10 or 12, and they come out fairly reasonable. But that's the only way you're gonna be able to afford a single family. Just like he said, he said it doesn't matter whether it's 400 square feet or 2,000 square feet. The price per square foot doesn't really, it does, but he said you've got already in a smaller home, you've got the furnace, you got the plumbing, you got all the fixtures, you got all your appliances, so. He said, when you get to a point, it doesn't really matter, you might as well go for but I think he said that's why where you can build multifamily fairly reasonable. Cause the contract can come in and give you a better price on the plumbing, his guys are there, he can plumb, 10 units in no time.
Economy of scale.
Yeah, economy of
With-
scale,
with
with the volume, he can do volume for way less, and same way with the concrete guys, they can pour a big foundation just as well as they could, their labor is gonna be where they show up and do a small one, they can do a big foundation like the center townhomes and do 8 or 10, even if there's 3 plexes. And I think that's where it's gonna have to be, like I say, talking to Valley today, like I said, he said it was. The square footage wise is still lumber's coming down, but he said. It's just, the labor is just. you know, and they're not gonna give you a deal on the labor, you know, I mean, them guys gotta pay what they gotta pay.
Yeah.
Concrete is right now almost $500 a yard, it's just, you know, the cost.
And they've got to pay their.
Yeah.
They gotta pay their people, but if you can do volume, like I say, in those. I don't know, like I say, a good solution would have been those out there at the roundabout where they could have sold those.
Yeah, but we do need rentals too for people who don't have the money for the down payment, you know, so.
Yeah, but
rentals are
affordable housing is, you know, right now, there's such a demand for rent. They're not gonna cut their price on rent right now. There's so much demand for rent. You're not gonna get a landlord to say, well, I'm gonna be a nice guy and I'm gonna cut down to $1,000 when he can get
Yeah.
$1,800. You know, there's people waiting to pay him the 1,800.
With that being said, would we even wanna think about creating some kind of rental? Ceiling of some kind for affordable homes, or is that overpowering control?
The thing of it is rental, you know, they can come and they leave and then they got no stake in the game. You know, that's affordable housing, what I feel is where somebody should own a home and have some pride in it, like those Habitat or stuff
Yeah.
like that.
Mm.
The rentals, I've done that and just, you know, it works, but they got no skin in the game and they just leave and all the incentives, whatever, they got nothing that. You know, they're not tied to anything if they pack up and leave.
There are some rent to own models that have been used in other places in the country where someone basically starts a buying process, but they say, we
Rent to
don't
own.
have a down payment. So we're just gonna pay rent for the first 2 years, let's say, for the.
See, something like that would work where it's rent to own,
That
then they've got
becomes their
some skin
down
in the game because, you know, let's say 20% of their rent or 30 goes towards their down payment or whatever.
And they're aligned on the outcome, so the landlord isn't left out high and dry, because if the people leave after 2 years, well, they still keep all the money. But if they do stay and then convert into an ownership model, that 2 years worth of rent becomes their down payment.
And usually
There are
something like that is kind of locked into a price where he can't raise the rent every month, you know.
Well, yeah, that's something that they would agree to, but we would maybe have an opportunity to provide some guidelines in terms of basing it off of AMI and what it is regionally, not just statewide, because we know in Aspen, houses sell for $100 million. In Carbondale, I think the average price is now $2 million.
Mhm.
Could be wrong about that, but it's
It's
not
less than
far
that,
off.
but no, you have to remember Carbondale's heavily weighted to River Valley Ranch and it's
I
not.
just, yeah, I meant it as a more abstract example.
It's over a
We need to
million,
get an
sure.
AMI that's a better representative of Western Garfield County.
So I don't know if anybody's seen, you know who Carrie Cooley is, she's our county treasurer. Did you see the post she put in the paper or in the thing? She put a post in at the top, one of the top 10 counties in the United States, hardest to buy or hot residents. Garfield County was up there, one of the top 10, 88% difficulty because of competition. So that's
Competition,
the waiting.
Because there's lack
One
of,
of the
because
top-
of lack of-
competition here,
lack of
not
volume.
necessarily.
Competition in Garfield County to get a house.
Lack
Yeah.
of,
One of the
lack
top
of
10.
inventory. and-
Yeah, like our inventory, that's what I was thinking.
Lack
of
Affordable.
supply.
Route County was
High
number
price.
2.
Yes.
Well, and that might be a thing then, is to encourage, like over there by the Heron's Nest, instead of putting in a bunch of single trailers. Building something similar to like over there at Centertown Homes or something like that are multifamily. That could be for sale, or do a rent to own type thing, or just some different models.
Yeah.
Because they're already looking at doing something, really their overall cost, they might be able to get more units in there. Have more, and with the thing with doing the multi-family units too is, it's easier then to have some open space or have some park space, because. You're not spreading each unit out and having to have the space around each unit. You have the units consolidated, and then you have common areas that you can utilize.
You know,
So it
there
might be something to,
be across the street, have another townhome set up like what you guys have. And perfect across the street. You can get.
when you say across the street, you mean over there by Heron's Nest, is what you're talking about?
Right across
Oh,
the
yeah,
street.
yeah, no,
I mean, you
there
could put
too.
in 5, 6 nice buildings and have, you know,
Yeah,
10,
but then
12.
again, you run into that because at once upon a time, you know, I hated trailers. It's like, okay, they all need to go away, they all need to be
Right.
replaced, but now with the cost of housing so expensive, trailers are valuable. in terms of the overall thing, because those are affordable houses.
Mhm.
So things like that, so like you said, oh, sure, if you get rid of the trailer park and build townhomes, what do you do with the people that are living there? Where do they go? Because they can't afford anywhere else.
That's part of the strategy that I think we ultimately have to get to is how do you address the people you're displacing when you're displacing them?
Yeah,
And figure out a way, and that's part of the ultimate strategy that you come up with, but there's two different kind of pieces to this. There's the macro and there's the micro. The macro is what's our overall goals. The micro is how do we do it one at a time? The little pieces. The park across the street. We could have a proposal out there, and if enough of the owners decided that they wanted to keep the trailer park, they get first right of refusal. So it's, they have the ability to say, no, we're gonna keep this as a trailer park. But somebody's gotta come up with the money to then own it and operate it. They can do that collectively, or they can do that with one individual. But that's part of the strategy, and I think getting down to if we're doing something, across the street, what do we do with those 12 families that are there now? How do we address taking care of them and then putting them back into the new?
Well, depending on how many
spot?
units you're putting in, and if you're not replacing, you could almost, to an extent, if they're already there, they get a highly discounted thing on their unit, because and then you sell the other couple at a little bit, at an almost normal price. And then that's gonna, they're still gonna make their money, but yet gives that person, the people that are invested already, that have stake already, possibly thing. I don't know, it's.
So, and I would add that there are other communities out there that have in their subdivision code, they've written in that all new subdivisions, X% has to be of a certain class of housing. Where maybe it's 20%. Doesn't matter where you're building that subdivision, 20% of that subdivision is going to have to meet a certain requirement to be in that, whatever we define as the affordable units. That's another strategy that you could ultimately try to employ. The real difficulty is ownership. You want ownership. I'm hearing that. But there's nothing to stop once they're owned for them to inflate just like everything else, and then they just move out of that affordable range. There are policies that you can put in place and restrict, but then again, it creates a bit of a servitude situation where people are stuck. They're not gonna be able to move because their property is not appreciated as quickly as everything else that's out there. So they don't get the benefit of all the tide raising all boats. They're going to, if that type of policy would limit their growth to a certain percentage, and it wouldn't go up with everyone else. But these are all ultimate strategies that I think as we think about and package the overall deal, what we have to kind of noodle our way through to figure out what's gonna work best for Silt.
Mark,
What Jim is talking about, there were certain percentage requirement, that's called inclusionary housing. And some places start out at 10% or 5%. 20% seems to be where it is in the mid Roaring Fork Valley. And a way to deal with rentals, because a lot of developers now are trying to do rentals for a number of reasons. We don't need to get into that. But you can also have a correlating track for rentals, so a certain percentage of those are affordable, and they're deed restricted also by area median income. But that's just one. I look at housing as like, you need 3 or 4 legs on that stool. If you just have inclusionary housing, well, some people where I'm from, they go, hey, we're gonna approve these projects, and therefore we'll get 20 housing units, but then they didn't want to see the other 80. So inclusionary is just a small percentage. If it gets to be too much, and values are high, that's when you start getting, I'll just call class separation, where in certain places, there's people have a bad view of density. So then you only build a few houses, but you have to have 30, 50, 20%, and they make. You know, the free market one's very expensive, and then the other ones as, you know, cheaply as possible. There are ways to get certain size requirements and bedrooms, but you have to look at other things too. I mean, it'd be good if the town had land, work with that Western Colorado Housing Group, which is trying to do buy down. So the strategy should be a whole mix. That inclusionary is, you know, one part, but is not, it doesn't fulfill all your needs.
Yeah, there's not gonna be a catch-all solution. It's gonna have to be multifaceted with a bunch of
Exactly, yeah,
different,
you have to have,
bunch of different things that you can throw, and then together you hope that it provides enough.
That's why we're taking a year to do it.
You know,
Right, it's a recognition that it is that complicated and involves internal as well as external parties. So
It's not as simple as just passing a thing saying, okay, if you're gonna build a subdivision, you have to have this much of that, because that just doesn't fix it.
unfortunately, the bad thing is the town is still. Any use, the days of bringing in modulars, even if they're HUD or whatever, is gonna be kind of limited to existing lots, because I don't see you're gonna get a new subdivision that's gonna allow. I mean, unless you did do something where X amount would be, but then
yeah,
it's gonna be hard to sell. Somebody's got a $600,000 house. You know, of course, modular is gonna cost that anyhow, but I mean. I think modulars are gonna be kind of limited. We're taking that away from me. They're gonna have to be limited to what's in town, the lots that are in town though,
I mean,
because
they're-
any new subdivisions. Coming in are gonna be either, like you say, is gonna have to either be. Single family homes or townhomes or whatever, X
or
amount.
infill lots, you know, some of these lots that are infill throughout town, you can put them in there.
And you could have a modular home subdivision. Occasionally there's.
Yeah,
In
and that,
fact, I have an application now for Hearn's Nest, which I'm just reviewing, but part of that concept is to. In the long term, get rid of those. Full-time living situations in RVs or campers and then make a more modular subdivision, which fills a need. And it would be a step up for the people who live there if they can transfer over, but that's one you'll be seeing later on this summer.
I mean, you take going into Newcastle. On the right side down that bottom, they were all modular. Every one of them was a modular. I remember when that was a hayfield years ago. And that looks nice. It looks great. You drive through there, you wouldn't have a clue that there were modulars in there.
I lived in a modular for 5 years, and sometimes, you know,
Yeah,
they,
so did I.
they can design them now like a.
Yeah, I mean, they got the same as the house, you know, like I say, that was, I remember that was a field, I lived in modular for many years, but yeah, you'd never know that below that road that's all modulars in there, you wouldn't know it. It looks really nice. And they're not cheap either. I mean, some of them resold for 300,000-400,000 too, so.
And as we get into this, we have some barriers that are in the code right now. And what's the standard lot in the downtown area, 25 by 110,
By 115.
115?
But that's where we come back to trustee Poston's comment about zoning, such that if a subdivision said, we want to meet the criteria of more affordable housing, but in order to do that, can we reduce the lot size? So we would rezone that in order to facilitate that, so that the developer still wins, because maybe they can put a couple of duplexes on some lots instead of single family, they do
You need
3
2 lots to
duplexes,
build on, don't you?
right? Those are the sort of zoning adjustments we could make on an as needed basis.
My point
Be
of,
code.
yeah, my point to bringing that up right now is if you've got a lot, 25 by 115. Our code won't allow you to build a house on. You will only maybe be able to put a trailer back on.
It's a good thing, Nicole's here to fix that.
And so one of the things that we have to kind of noodle our way through is how do we address that and how do we work with those folks that we can figure out how to put a structure on that lot. And have a situation where they're not necessarily stuck, always being in a trailer. So that's one piece. Then there's another section of our code that has a point system. That is difficult at best on a small house
22 points or
25.
25.
25 points.
25 points.
We talked about it in the context of the tiny homes, that they simply couldn't meet the number 25.
Yeah.
That it was just not reasonable to expect.
You know, I brought that to you before and you said, no, we want that in there. Another thing that is not on anybody's radar except for Nicole and mine, and maybe you've heard it now, Jim also, but the single family has a certain size requirement. That gentleman who was trying to replace that modular, it really had to be, what, over 1,000 square feet, and what he was getting, he could get an 850 square foot model, but not the larger one, and that was another problem which needs to be tweaked.
And so, I mean, there's a number of, I mean, we can individually go in and change the code. That's really not that hard to do. Or you can think a little bit more globally and you could create an overlay district for a certain part of town that has much greater flexibility in terms of those code provisions. So there's a number of things that you can look at along the way to address kind of getting around the rules as they're established if you don't want to change those rules. You want to keep your 25-point system, keep your 25-point system, but maybe in that overlay district, you only need 16 or whatever number we're going to come up with. And maybe in that overlay district, you can have an 800 square foot house or an 850 square foot house where you're not tied to having at least 1,000 square feet. So there's a number of things that we can look at. And these are all parts of the long-term strategy that, you know, will come out of this and what we have to do to, you know, make it work. I mean, one of my dreams is looking at some of these interspersed trailers with, you know, structures, modular, manufactured homes. Many of them are so dilapidated, they can't even get insurance on it. So all their belongings are sitting there uninsured. And so there's a big risk, but we have some vacant lots in town that if we could build one unit with Habitat for Humanity or somebody else and move one trailer out, that frees up another lot to do the same thing and just cascade our way through one step at a time. That's more of the micro, but it helps one family at a time. Most of the housing programs are gonna wanna see something on a much larger scale. But there are things that we can do locally that would help. And it's ownership. You're getting somebody out of a trailer and you're getting them into a home that's permanent, that's a new structure. They're gonna take pride in that. I mean, we have smaller homes all throughout the downtown area. Some of them are well maintained and they look great, and others not so well, or not so much. Our goal is to get people to be in those well-maintained homes, because it just makes the community look that much better.
You know, I think you gotta be careful, we wanna be careful when you start shrinking lots too much, because then you gotta think of the neighborhood, you're gonna be putting in a good neighborhood, all of a sudden somebody could squeeze, and I'm getting at, like, I've got 5 city lots. I could tear my place down and put 5 trailers in. And that wouldn't go very well in the neighborhood, I guess, you know, it's a.
Well, and
That's,
But people did that back in the 70s, you know?
but then next door is the same way, so between the two lots of us, we could put 10 trailer homes in there, you know. So you gotta be careful when you wanna shrink it, because right now, like you say, it's 2 lots. So, I'm just putting that out there. You gotta-
no, I'm not advocating.
Oh, no, I mean.
Shrinking lots, I'm advocating maybe shrinking the square footage that's required to go on a lot.
Yeah,
And I agree with that 100%.
yeah. that-
Allow those to be buildable. I think, you know, and there's a whole another prong of this that we have to be mindful of, and it's accessory dwelling units and multi-generational or multi-family homes in a single family home. We have situations now where we know that there's more than one family living in a single family home. And how do we address that? Parking becomes an issue, street parking becomes, you know, these are all things that we have to contemplate as we go through this process, how our code's going to address it. And how we're going to deal with that. I mean, I think, you know, there's been some state legislation that has basically said you have to allow ADUs. And what's that gonna look like specifically for Silt? Any other comments?
No, just, I wanted to circle back around to when, you were talking about shrinking lots or subdividing. If you can only have one primary structure on each parcel, so if you have 5 city lots in one parcel, you would have to subdivide those in order to put additional
Right.
units on it, and that would come in front of the board for subdivision, so you would still have power to say, no, we're not gonna allow you to subdivide your lot into 5 and do 5 trailers on there. So you'd still have the power to dictate what was happening and where. Yeah,
But as we go through this, there's gonna be a lot of interesting discussions, because it's not. You know, it's not as simple as just saying, all right, we're gonna update our code.
And may wave wand over the top of it and everything's fixed.
I mean, if we could do that, Nicole would be done already, she would have done this, and it'd all be taken care of.
There's not an AI program that we can just put our code into, and it'll kick out one that's fixed and works.
Give me PTSD, that anymore. I'm throwing that out there, enough. Killing me.
Yeah, unfortunately, any new subdivision, that each subdivision, as they keep coming in, the cost per lot's just going up, you know, I mean, with the cost, even the cost of infrastructure is just out of control, you know. So I bet you're not gonna get much of a subdivision anymore, where the lot's gonna be under $100,000.
One of the things for Silt too is like you were saying though, there also is, we're almost landlocked in where we can go.
Yeah, I mean, north
There's
is
not that
pretty
much,
much the only
there's
place
not that
to
much
go.
undeveloped land really, to be
Yeah,
honest.
we can't go east, we can't go west, and we're not gonna go across the river, so we're pretty much.
We're waving a magic wand on that one too.
Yeah, and we could go east between, us and the high school, that property.
Back in the day, I met with some contractors and some realtors. We were gonna subdivide that, and they said it's unsellable because it's not connected. You've got nothing connecting that, because you gotta go way the other side of that swamp. And they said there's no bike path, there's nothing connecting to town, and they said they just wouldn't be sellable, because you wouldn't even be part of, it might as well be over in Minneota. Because you're gonna have almost 3/4 of a mile between the town, a gap in there.
Yeah, I mean, if the, whatever, the lumber mill or whatever that is, if that ever sells, we can,
That's all,
Bill
commercial.
West.
That's all commercial up there.
Well, we can,
well, that's the county.
when it would
change.
end.
That's county, that could
Yeah.
be, but now
we
see,
can
they're
change
putting
it
in all,
whatever we want, yeah.
they're putting in all of those storage units back there too now, so.
Lumber mill, that's what that would look.
Yeah.
Anyway,
We got some
but there are
over,
possibilities.
there are possibilities, but we're pretty limited anyhow.
The good news is that this conversation is happening in a lot of places, individual
Oh, yeah.
towns, counties, states. There's suddenly a great deal of information available, so it's really about cherry picking out the ones that are relevant to the town of Silt. There are plenty of other communities going through the same process, either as an emergency measure or like us to try and be proactive.
yeah, we don't have to invent it ourselves. We just have to figure
Exactly.
out who's
We're
using
not
it.
on an island trying to figure this out. There are plenty of local communities that are scrambling to solve this problem. So I think that gives us a leg up. Now we can steal their research, steal their data, and modify it for our use cases.
And that's the tough part about affordable housing, because there isn't, nobody has ever come up with the plan yet, because 20, 30, 40, 50 years have gone by and people have been trying to figure this out for, decades, and nobody's done it yet. So like you said, I mean, every little step, I'm not saying don't try, but I'm just saying everything we can do helps, but nobody has, come up with the magic plan and take care of all of it. And, and I also say that because I also ran into some lady at the dog park who's from Glenwood, who I forget her name and what she did, but she's like, yeah, I bought my house in Glenwood 40 years ago and things were stupid expensive then. And we were just talking, and she's like, when did you buy your house? I said 20 years ago. She's like, well, how expensive was it? I said, I was worried I couldn't afford the payments when I bought it. So she's like, see, 40 years ago, 20 years ago, it still had the problem. And so that problem has been around for decades and nobody's figured it out yet. So yes, I mean, everything we can do will be positive to help, but we or anybody in the country, nobody's come up with the perfect solution.
Well, part of the problem is,
There
I
are
mean,
policies out there. There are
Yeah.
some policies that have been written that are out there. I think our point in common here will be to figure out what's the board's values, guidelines, and priorities for the people that we represent. So I've heard words as like partnership, honor with the habitat community could be another partner. I've heard things, explore multifamily units, explore the concept of rental versus owning the property. So there are policies out there that we can, in alignment to what the board decides and what's the overall feel, which I think that's part of the objective of this meeting today, to get a really good feeling of where the mindset from the board is, so that you guys can bring back some of those guidelines. And just getting that vision, I heard overlay district flexibility, inclusionary homes. So if we go out there and look for policies like that, and then maybe come back to us and see how those policies read to us, and then maybe we can tweak a few things, but I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think there are resources out there, and we just need to figure out what are our priorities, what are our core values when it comes to affordable housing, and what's the overall goal that we want to achieve. I heard things like, we gotta value culture, diversity. We want run away from policies that will give cultural shocks of, wealthy, not as wealthy. So those are some of the values that I've heard today, in alignment with some words that if you go out there and look for policies, different ones that would address, I think that this discussion will help continue take on to that point. But to Mayor Pro Tem Hanrahan, I do believe that there are resources, and we need to define our values and just give guidance and continue to come up with some of the options that strike out to us like we've been doing before. But we don't have to reinvent the
I
wheel.
mean, we could solve it, you just take, you have corporations only can make a certain percentage of profit, anything over that goes into affordable housing.
Everybody's,
Control.
It's a wrap.
But I mean, that's the problem, that's part of the problem though, is because it's not just the cost of housing, it's gas right now is $3.43 a gallon, which is asinine. It's ridiculous for gas to be that much. There's no reason why gas should cost that much. Except for companies have record profits, well, imagine that, because you keep raising the price ridiculous amounts. That's just it, and that's the frustrating thing that we don't have anything to do with, we can't fix that. So, but we can work on some of the other stuff, and that's all we can do.
everybody thought them tiny homes was a joke, was a bad idea. If it's such a bad idea, how come it sold out so damn quick and people love them?
I didn't say they're a bad idea,
It's not a
I'm just
bad
saying
idea,
that.
it's a possibility in another place for a tiny home set up like that, because we run them storage units, and you can't imagine the people that rent from us that they sold their $700,000 house, they bought one of those, just him and her, they love it.
Yep.
They said
No,
they
yeah.
don't have no maintenance, no nothing, and they sold out before they were even, did the first one, they had almost pre-sold all of them. Everybody thought it was a bad idea. And now they're reselling for $270.
Well, that's what I'm saying, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, I'm just saying that it's not necessarily affordable housing.
Yeah, but I mean, when they started, they were 100 and some, but it's still less than $500,000.
But then you own the house, but you're still paying lot rent and everything else on top of that, and so it's not like it's
Yeah, but it's not no different.
it's ownership, but it's not ownership.
You're paying less than, it's the same as a condo. You're
Yeah.
paying less than a condo fee, they pay the taxes, insurance, water, sewer, garbage, everything was paid, so it's no different than a townhome or a condo.
Like, if they're paying water and sewer and they're raising the rate on that, it might be a good idea.
It's affordable in the context that it's somebody's first home, probably not their
Yeah.
last, but again, it gets them out of a position of being a renter.
Well, it's still cheaper than $1,300 a month for
And
a
then
efficiency apartment.
Well, no, it
they
works for
sell
people. I
it
mean,
3 to 5
it's
years, their
500
family
and-
expands,
it's
and they
500.
make a little profit, and then they move into a
Yeah.
single family, maybe in our community, maybe outside of it, but.
There's a family I know, they have 3 boys. that are living in one of those units, or one of those places over there.
Holy
They're in
cow.
our neighborhood, and they've moved over, they've had in our kids since then. But it works for them because they're extremely close family. They do a lot of camping and stuff outside, so they don't spend much time any more time in the house than they need to. So
No,
they don't need a lot of space. And it
no,
works for them.
but it's still
But
cheaper.
it's not, and that's what I'm saying, I'm not criticizing the idea of what it is, homes, they're great for some people, but just not for everybody, so it's just like this. That's one leg of our chair,
Yeah,
but our chair, we can't have a 3-legged stool or a 4-legged stool. We're needing
but it's a great
basically
idea for
almost a barrel that's
Everybody that-
completely surrounded with spokes.
that one over there, so they, you know, I guess it's an option, I don't know. You know, maybe increase the size a little, I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah.
And
I
that's
guess-
why Manager Mann's, diagram that he put together here with the housing needs assessment, that's our number one goal, is to determine what is needed. We have such a large demographic in our area, we need to know, because we have to provide housing for people that are getting ready to retire that need less space. Or housing for people that are just starting off that need less space, and then housing for full families that need a single family, or housing for multi-generational families. Where they have you know, their parents, they're caretaking for their parents and they need more space, or they need ADUs. So we have a large demographic of people that live here, even outside of wealthy or not wealthy, of what kind of space they need. And so that'll help us determine what we're really looking at. Are we looking at the majority of the need in our community to be smaller houses, larger houses? ADUs, and so that's gonna help us determine based off of what. Before we can even get into policy and get into, like you guys are saying, not reinventing the wheel and reusing some stuff. But we need to know what we're working with first and what the need is. Without that, we're just kind of shooting in the dark, but trying to create policy.
Good.
So if we can follow what Manager Man put together, that'll allow us to determine what is needed. And then we can come back to you with more of an idea and concrete answer of, we need smaller spaces and we need larger spaces, or we need spaces in the middle, like as far as square footages.
And we need to throw the senior housing in there too.
We do,
Because that's,
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, and I think, you know, I think one of the goals at the end of the day that I heard from just about everybody was you prefer ownership to rentals. Now, it doesn't mean that there isn't room for rentals. But the goal, one of the goals is gonna be in a position where we're encouraging ownership so that they're permanent members of the community.
Yes.
And they're not a transient renter coming in and coming, you know, and leaving. You know, ultimately, this is where, after we get the needs assessment done and we come up with the strategies, that's what's gonna come out of it, that then is gonna drive the updating to the comp plan and the code.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. Yeah, the ultimate outcome is home ownership, but you need the rentals to
Absolutely.
help people to get there.
And, you know, we also need to be able to go the other direction.
Yeah.
As Director Centeno said, we have to provide for transitional housing from somebody who is living in a 4-bedroom house or a 3-bedroom house with kids that is an empty nester now. Maybe they don't need that anymore. And they don't wanna leave the community, so we have to have places for them to go as well.
Yeah, and I guess maybe, let me back up a little bit. So the DOLA grant that we got, what exactly is that going to cover?
Good question.
This?
So it was written, and I quote, undertake a housing needs assessment, public outreach process, and update the town's code. That's the way the grant was written. Until we get an RFQ back in terms of what the housing needs assessment is gonna cost, I have no idea at all. You know, I'm hopeful that the housing needs assessment isn't gonna take half of that. Which leaves us some additional dollars to do the outreach, and then leaves us some additional dollars to be able to move into the code adjustments. I don't know until we get this first piece of the puzzle.
Yeah,
When do we expect to have the first piece of the puzzle?
I would suspect the RFQ will go out in short order, and we'll have responses within 30 days.
oh, okay. And I guess have you guys had a discussion with, planning and zoning over this yet?
Not as of yet.
So this is just the first
Yeah,
conversation, and
the
this is
kickoff.
just
I
to
think we should have
get
them
a
in
feel
here.
from both
so that-
sides and see what's going on.
So that they
Okay.
can weigh in based
But I
on what
think
they're
that
hearing,
would be,
looking at.
that meeting would be more helpful after we've already done the needs assessment, because once we have an idea of what they think the need is, then we can communicate a little more about that.
But they may know things that factor into the needs assessment.
And this is a topic of conversation that we're gonna have with our joint meeting on June 10th. I can't see that
Oh,
far, I
okay,
think it's
okay.
June 10th. The first board meeting in June that we're doing the joint meeting
With P and Z.
Yeah.
with P and Z.
So we'll just
Yep.
Because I-
It'll be a
I'd like
topic
this
of
on the agenda.
conversation.
That's perfect.
We were just bringing it up with you all first.
Okay.
You know, we've got the June 10th meeting, we have the High Water Farms tour, but there'll be time for some discussion in there as well.
I just feel P and Z needs to be included in this, and I understand this. is a big
100%,
kickoff.
and they're talking with the developers in a lot of cases as well as planner chain, so they're gonna have more on the ground knowledge about what's currently happening that may influence our policy decisions.
Mhm.
I'd like to get them included as early and as often as possible.
Yeah, this is a great plan, the way it's laid out, how you guys are prioritizing and approaching it. I'm 100% behind it.
And there's gonna be a bunch of spokes that come off and stuff along the way.
So
We'll go off in tangents, I'm sure.
I know we want to make sure we leave 15 minutes for the Shoshone discussion. I have a request for each of the sort of 5 steps as I look top down on that chart. Can we have best estimate ETAs for each of the 5, just to help guide our process? Again, I'm a process guy for better or worse.
Now, I was gonna
If
ask.
we have time restrictions, we'll get stuff done. That's why I wanted to start this process. So housing needs assessment, we need 100 days. Okay. Bang. And then the community outreach, we need 65 days. Okay.
Okay,
But let's structure the process so that anybody who looks at this can not just see the plan, but see the when.
okay. We'll try. to-
Otherwise, I'm concerned, budget season's gonna be kicking off and any number of other things will derail us and this will get backburned again.
And if there aren't deadlines set on it, then it will get started, then
Deadlines work.
We won't let it go back burn. We have a grant we have to spend.
Money must be spent.
It must be spent, so we have to move forward or lose the money.
That would be great. Is there anything else that you need from us during this work session to take next steps and move forward?
I don't think so at this point. I think we got some general feedback. You know where we're headed. We'll get a general timeline put together where we've got some deliverables. And we'll just keep moving forward.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next item, unless anybody had any other comments you wanted to make regarding affordable housing. We're good? Then let's talk about Shoshone water rights. And this one goes back to you, Jim.
Yeah, you heard the presentation from a couple of weeks ago. I know you at that time said we'll talk about it during budget season, but this is a building block of the budget. So I really wanted to get this in front of you sooner than later. As you know, I wrote in the staff memo, they're about 50%. Are they gonna come up with the remaining 50% of the $99.5 million purchase price? I honestly don't know. Trustee Seifert and I were talking a little earlier. There's gonna have to be a huge influx of cash. The question is, does Silt want to contribute, and B, how much?
Well, right now, it all would just be, we wouldn't really contribute, we would set aside.
set aside earmark
We
funds
would,
for
we
it.
would pledge.
But it would pledge, but still, it's gotta be there, so.
And we have to set it aside and have it in a savings account, but if it didn't go through, then we can use that money for something else.
Yeah,
Exactly.
But I definitely think it's important that we do something, yes, because if we don't buy it, if this area doesn't buy those water rights, Denver or somebody else will, and then it goes the other direction, and then, or somebody in California buys them, and then it goes that way. But either, and it, the non-consumable part of the water right basically means that there has to be that much water flowing through there at that time.
correct,
Which is huge to this area in a lot of different ways.
yes.
Obviously, much more important to Glenwood than us because Glenwood has all we don't have rafting companies in Silt currently. But there's still a lot of things that are needs by it.
You know, the only trouble is we're so low in the totem pole and priority. You know, I wish we would gain, I mean, like Joe, like you're talking to Joe, Cameo puts in a call. You know, we don't gain nothing, but you know, so we gotta be real careful about what we give. I mean, it's important, yes, I understand, but. Like I say, I'm on the Saltwater Conservancy, we sent somebody to one of the big meetings. At this Shoshone thing, and, you know, they said it's just, I don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, they hit everybody big. They got that first 40-some million real quick, you know, but now. The second half, I mean, they're all the way down to Clifton and Palisade. Coming up with the second half, the same people are gonna have to donate again, because there's nobody left, unless they get, like I told Jim, unless they come up with some state money. Is what they're gonna have to do, a miracle to get another 40-some million.
Yeah, I mean, we have to contribute something.
We have to do
That's what I
something.
was just about to ask. Are we at least the line that we have to contribute something? Is
Yeah,
there
do
anybody
something.
who wants to argue against contribution?
You know, we
I'm
can
for
pledge,
contribution.
we can pledge something, I don't know what.
Do we know what other similarly sized communities
Yeah,
have been pledging?
they've ranged from tens of thousands to 100,000. I think Glenwood did $2 million.
Clifton did, I think, a couple hundred thousand.
Yeah,
or
I
something
mean,
like that.
so, I mean, it runs the gambit. And really it comes down to what's the value to us to have that water flowing through the river. And I think from a recreational standpoint, it matters. What does that equate to in terms of a dollar amount? We have to be mindful about the finite resources we have to work with and what the water utility can afford. Could it afford $100,000? Yes. Could it afford $200,000? Maybe. You know, if we're spreading it out over a number of years, yes, we can afford that without necessarily impacting increases in user rates, et cetera. We wouldn't necessarily need to do that. Going much further, now you're starting to impact those user rates, and I don't think after what you just went through with the water plant, that you're in a position that you wanna push the envelope any further.
What fund would it come out of?
It would come out of the water fund.
Water fund?
No, it's currently the water and wastewater fund, but it would be earmarked water utility revenues.
I don't know why, but I have 50 to 100,000 at the most on my mind. I don't know how I came up with those numbers, but
Yeah, I don't know.
You're a finance person, that's it. It's what you do.
Trustee Poston thinks like I do.
it aligns in a lot of different ways.
So that would be a total sum over a period of years, or that would
Yes.
be an annual gift recurring over a period of years.
Uh,
I called it a gift. Pledge.
A pledge. If you were to pledge $75,000, we would be earmarking $25,000 a year
For 3 years.
for 3 years. To get to that point.
So
We'll need
100
the
in
money
theory
by-
is 20 per year for 5 years. And
Yep.
that would prevent us from having to increase rates. Again, I know we're
Yeah.
talking generally, we haven't gone down to the penny.
Right.
I mean, we could always start, I guess, we could always raise the pledge. I guess we'll get, I mean, we just gotta be real careful. We got a lot of stuff coming up, but we gotta spend money.
Not out of the water utility.
No, but we talked more
Um,
generally about cost of living earlier, and I don't think anyone in the town can suffer another rate increase for any reason.
I mean,
Least of all-
20,000 popped
least
into
of all
my
this.
list. You know, if we're throwing out numbers, that would have popped in
A
my.
$20,000 annual for 5 years would be 100.
Well, I just think it once.
Our pledge, they
If
need
we
the
only
money by
$20,000,
27.
that's not even, I mean,
It's a 3-year plan.
Well,
It was a place to start, you
No, I know,
know.
I-
Because I think we could afford that.
3,000 and change to
Without-
get to
yeah.
100K.
Yeah, we can, but we gotta be careful. We got people. We gotta watch our money. See, the sales tax is dropping.
Someone talk
Yeah,
to
but
me
then
about what
it's out of
happens
the
if we
water.
don't do it.
Doesn't matter, we still need money.
Give me the worst case
No,
scenario.
Worst case scenario is that,
Come on, so.
non-consumptive water right goes to somebody else and they control it.
They buy, Las Vegas buys it, or Southern
Yeah.
California buys it.
Water rights,
And it's,
what's happening environmentally
And these are
Important to keep in the forefront.
origin water rights. These are
It's one of the most
compact.
senior water rights on the system from what I understand.
And we'll never, reasonably speaking, we'll never have this opportunity
Yeah.
again.
No, we won't.
And, you know, from a tourism perspective, having that water flowing in the river not only is benefit from tourism, but ecologically, it's gonna be a benefit as well.
Well, and I think she claims that they weren't, Excel wasn't gonna be shutting down the plant or anything, but they haven't been operating the plant because of safety issues for some time.
Right.
So that's why they're looking to sell it, because even though they say they're not looking to shut down the plant,
They haven't been operating.
they're looking to shut down the plant.
It's an asset and they're.
And that's where, and they're looking to get, if they can, or if they can at least keep it open. But I think they're offering it up to the local area first as a good neighbor policy, almost, that's the thing.
And part of like planning sustainability is looking into like long-term vision. That is in alignment with our long-term, overall plan. We're looking into tourism and developing and growing. So we are not just looking at this contribution now, we are looking into the contribution that's going to have an effect like years later. Looking farther ahead.
Yeah, this isn't, this contribution doesn't just help the water. Or water, situation, it also impacts tourism, like she's saying, it impacts a lot of other things in addition to just that. So it has it's a multi-pronged benefit versus, it doesn't just give us one thing.
You know,
Because I guarantee you, if the river were to not flow as well as it does, that's not gonna help Rislinda out. That whole plan that things we've talked about, having a river walk area over there. There's not a whole lot of water in that river that,
Ditch walk,
yeah, it just doesn't quite work.
puddle walk.
Well, anybody know what rifle pledge?
Rifle, I thought was $100,000.
Okay. Cause yeah, I mean, we could do 50.
So we,
would say, you know, if we did 15 to 20 for 3 years, each year, it'd be 60, 45 to 60,000. Just my
Yeah.
range, I would say minimum maybe between 15 and 20 for 3 years. We can always raise it. I mean, if it looks, you know, something changes in the next, you know, next year's pledge, you know, we win the lotto and somebody
If
buys.
we do 15 for 5, it's 75,000, it's 25,000 less
but
than what
it's
we were
three, it
saying.
has to be three.
We have to, they need the money by 2027.
Oh, I thought you
3 years.
you said 5 years earlier, that's why.
So if we did 15 to 20, that'd either be 45 or 60. That I'd have no rules. You know, like I say, we can always raise it down the road.
Yeah.
Somebody comes in and Jim wins the lotto and pays for the water plant.
I didn't get a
like,
chance to
you know,
go
we
buy
don't-
my ticket today.
It's a lotto, he disappears.
Yeah, he's gonna write a check for the water plant and pay it off for us, and then he can leave.
Do we have any kind of a general idea about a number, knowing that it's spread out over 3 years? That won't adversely impact our other budgetary priorities. I'm sure you and Amy have had this
I would
conversation.
say you could go up to $100,000 without any impact. Obviously, the lower the dollar amount, the less impact it's gonna have.
And that's why I guess I'd
The
rather,
number that you're looking for is that certain funds, they are required to keep a percentage, is that the number?
Yeah,
you're
well, yeah,
looking for?
there's gonna be an impact
Yeah,
potentially
okay.
on reserves.
Yeah, this dollar amount isn't gonna be significant.
How does the board feel about 25 per year for 3 years for a 75 total? With Jerry, your point about we can always increase it depending on how our budget looks in 1 or 2
I'd rather
years.
start out low and then increase, I don't know, I'm just outpassing it, you know, just being careful. That's fine.
Chris, what are your thoughts?
See, it's 75, is that what you were thinking, Andrea?
I was thinking at 50 and 100 max.
It's in the middle of where you're
We're
at.
in the middle.
That's kind of a bit.
I'd say
I-
20, that'd be
to-
60,000.
Yeah, so to trustee Seiferd's point, just being cautious, I
I'd,
would,
yeah, if we did 20, that'd be 60, we can always raise it from there.
yeah.
I just wouldn't feel comfortable going more right now until we,
You're saying 60.
60 total
Total, yeah.
spread over 3 years of
3
20
years.
each year. What are your thoughts, Chris?
I would agree
I
with
can do
that.
60.
I would agree with that.
I'd be okay a little bit more, so I'd be okay with that.
It works for me.
Okay,
Well, at least we're throwing it in for the budget and we can
Yeah.
look at it.
We'll put that in the budget, you can see what it looks like, we can model it all out. And we won't communicate the pledge as of yet, because that'll take a formal action by
Right.
the Board of Trustees, but that's what we'll go on the premise from.
Is there anything else you need from us as it relates to the Shoshone water rights?
Not at this point.
Should we take a 10-minute break then before we start our regular meeting?
I'm okay with that.
No. Here. Good, thank you. Yeah, that's reasonable. We can always go up
It's probably in the minutes for the last one. Probably in the minutes for,
Piece of the
May 7th or 13th, whatever.
metal building,
Oh.
they need to fix. And
Yeah.
then we can at least get their cheese deal going, so that.
Concentrated.
We have a physical copy of this?
I don't think we're having it started.
What are you,
I can't get into my email.
I'll get your copy.
When I'm on the local network, it doesn't let me log in.
No.
So you want to send it to Nicole so she can print it? You want to call Lori, maybe?
He's really.
That's not the way.
Mayor had a piece of paper that he read off of,
No, we're gonna try to.
but he may have it memorized.
No, he doesn't. I see him reading it, but I wonder if he keeps it with his private stuff.
Or he can just show up. I think so.
Oh, but he has pro tem.
Your findings.
What happens if both pro tem and mayor? Then we don't have a meeting?
It's just Lord of the Flies, there's pitchforks and torches, it's mayhem.
But that's what you have to think about.
If there were a quorum, I suppose that you all would just pick somebody.
I was just curious. How are you, Joe?
I'm good, how are you, Andrea?
I'm good. I saw you back there and meant to say hi. How's your day?
Good.
Yeah, busy.
Busy, always.
Which is like going to these meetings too.
Oh, yeah.
Say that again?
And you like going to these meetings too.
Did I say that?
No, I love it.
Well, you did expression. We know how happy you are.
He always does look
When
happy.
he's in the room, he talks the party line, we know what's going on.
Oh, 7 o'clock, almost? No, almost.
I'm just waiting, seeing if I'm gonna,
Do you want me to get?
Sadly, it does not have what you want.
Can you not just
minutes?
email it?
Yeah. It just says there were no public comments.
do we have a template that can be provided?
Oh,
Not that I'm aware of. I think, just read the agenda, that, whatever. At least the first sentence.
Or yeah, just read.
Just read that first
That section.
Thank you. I'm on the fourth, taking out.
Which of these spots, right?
That was surprisingly,
I go off the computer.
we're a minute late now.
I go one on the computer thing.
We are unmuted.
Are we unmuted in the chamber?
We are.
The time is now 7:01 PM and I will call this meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Mayor Reichel, Mayor Pro Tem Hanrahan,
Here.
Trustee Britnall,
Here.
Trustee Clausen,
Here.
Trustee Poston,
Here.
and Trustee Seibert.
Here.
Can we rise for the pledge of allegiance in a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Be seated. The next item on the agenda is public comments. Persons desiring to make a public comment on items not on the agenda, please activate the raise hand function in the meeting program. Or Sheila, or Lori, did we have any voicemails or calls?
We did not.
And I do
No.
not show any raised hands. We only have staff on the Zoom meeting.
No one signed in, presumably, given that the chamber is empty. Okay. Next item on tonight's agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the May 7th Special Board of Trustees meeting, minutes of the May 13th Board of Trustees meeting, the award of the Home Avenue project to the lowest bidder, who was Frontier Paving Incorporated, the renewal of the fermented malt beverage and wine liquor license to Good to Go, Come and Go 905 change of trade name to Maverick 5114, and the award of bid for Sunrise Tank 2 restoration project to Viking Industrial Painting in the amount of $138,200. Any board members have any comments?
I'd like to
Question
separate
on number
six.
6. Joe, on number 6 here, it says alternate items not included. And it says replace floor and subgrade beneath as needed, 125. Is that something that we can get by without? I mean, what did
Yes. There's some dips in the floor, which the people that did the evaluation said it's fine. But that was in the first bid and they took it out. So that's something we can live without.
Okay. And then the exterior blast and coat does not include full shroud, but the other one, it's like, that's in there though, isn't it? Or,
We didn't put that in there. We figured that Public Works could do that.
oh, okay, that's, okay.
You guys are good.
That was my only
Yeah.
question.
So my question with that is just looking at, you have the list of items included in pricing, then you have a list of items excluded in pricing, but that list is twice as long as the ones included. So do you know which items here they're going to include, or are they going to include all of that? And do we know how much that is going to cost?
And all the items, their base bid was 77,700. All the items that in the figure, that's what they're going to include.
Okay, even the excluded.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, but we pulled those out of the excluded
Uh-huh.
items and add them to the,
okay, gotcha. Okay, so everything on this list is what's included in the bid.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
So effectively, Joe, this is the not to exceed price.
I'm hoping so. There's always those. There's always those little unknowns, but we're hoping not to exceed that price to 201,000.
We didn't get any grant money or anything. This is all coming.
Yes, we did. We got a 300 or we got 180.
Is that what, that's what this is included in?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't have any further questions.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second,
We have a motion by trustee Seifert and seconded by trustee Poston to approve the consent agenda as presented. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Do any trustees have any conflicts of interest with any of the agenda items this evening?
Yes, sir.
Does town staff have any changes to the agenda for this evening?
No, sir.
Any trustees need to make any agenda changes?
Nope.
Next item on the agenda is the town parks discussion, and I will turn this over to Manager Mann.
As you're aware, we had a park recreation and culture, committee meeting, a couple weeks ago, last week. Where we discussed a variety of park issues. The conclusions that came out of the committee were to basically not necessarily drop, but reduce the Gateway Park maintenance because it really doesn't have any park structures. We're gonna treat it more like an open space. We will continue to maintain it and water it and mow it. But on a less frequent basis because it's not really being used as a park. The second piece that was discussed was Hairpin Park, which is a landlocked park, basically off of the Elm and 16th Street, not Elm.
Yeah.
Elm Street and 16th Street. it's a landlocked parcel and we, discussed what the disposition would be, whether we would just give it back to the property owners. It was the decision or the direction of the committee that we would go approach the landowner to the, north and see if we could do a land swap and attach the hatch marked area that's in the memorandum on the right to an existing town of Silt property in exchange for the area that is currently Hairpin Park. It's close to the same amount of square feet in terms of that swap. The private landowner does receive a little bit more land than what we would receive in exchange. But it would certainly improve our ability to either have a park in that location or potentially do something else with the vacant land. So that, we will approach the landowner. Discussion, was had regarding Demelby Park, which is part of the center townhomes. Again, because that park has no dedicated, parking, doesn't have any dedicated access to the park. And we didn't get a response from the HOA. It was the decision that we would work with the HOA to transfer that or give it back to them. To maintain and do whatever they choose to do with it, highest best use, whether it's parking, whether they keep the park, that would be their choice. We did discuss the Silt Cemetery, moving the entry sign a little bit closer to 7th Street. Ultimately, looking to probably rework the entrance that would not come off of 7th Street because that's a difficult entryway. I think, correct me wrong, it would be off of 4th Street.
That would be the future goal, to have it come up at 4th Street with some dedicated land from their range.
Where that it ends up there,
Yeah.
then just go up.
Straight up 4th Street.
It'd be straight up or would kind of zig or,
I believe it'd be straight up. It all depends on
yeah.
Fair Ranch, what they're willing to work
It's not
with the
real
town
bad there,
in the future.
It certainly would be a better entrance than what we currently have.
yeah, cause that's kind of a blind spot coming in and out of there too, you know, where there's now, especially with more and more traffic up above. So.
And the last piece that we actually discussed was, looking at our parkland dedication. The code is rather specific in terms of what parkland dedication, and I think part of the discussion was we really don't need any more pocket parks. So if the park is not of a substantive size, that we would look to have the payment in lieu of parkland dedication as opposed to another pocket park. So that was really the discussion that came out of that. I don't know if there's any additional comments that the Board of Trustees want to make or questions that you have on any of those items. This was just an informational item. There really wasn't any action required.
So it's listed as an action item.
Yeah, I have a comment about the 4th Street access. Is now a good time to just approach them just to see if they would be willing to do something in the future, you know?
Certainly can.
Yeah, you know, whatever, donate or repurchase land or something, just to see if they're, you know, yay, nay, or maybe.
We certainly can approach them and see if we can affect that change.
Okay, and any new updates on the community park? That I know we were working through some of the details as far as the project goes.
Our details at this point are that we need to do the community outreach process to get feedback on our conceptual design
Okay,
before we can do final design.
okay, and conceptually, just to repeat, there would be just one tennis court. Can you go over a little bit of the concept? I really like that, but I just.
It was, the existing tennis courts were gonna be broken into one tennis court and then a couple of pickleball courts. And then there was gonna be a volleyball pit, some additional playground structures with the appropriate fall protection. And, I believe there was a shelter, a pavilion shelter that was gonna be within.
Basketball court.
Oh, and a basketball.
Yeah, it sounded really great, so I'm excited about it.
But we can't put any of that into stone until such time as we have gotten our community outreach done.
Okay, and do we have a timeline? I took that line from you.
We would anticipate concluding the community outreach, towards the end of the summer.
Okay, and is there a reason? Is it just a lengthy process
It's
or?
finding the right time to meet with the target audience that we have to meet with, which is the Hispanic community in particular under the grant itself. And we felt that it would be important to include payday as part of that, but then also the beginning of the school year orientation time at the school.
Like a service, we get a very
Yes.
thorough engagement.
I have two questions. First of all, item number 3, Demelby Park. You said you never heard back from the HOA. Did you send that to the property manager? Okay. And then a question on number 5, parkland dedication. Do you have at least an initial idea of the minimum park size that you would be willing to take on that will make it not a pocket park?
I think that's a discussion point that we have to delve into further, in terms of what's reasonable. I think some of our early discussions about it had more to do with making sure that we had enough space to do a play field, whether it's a soccer field or a baseball field, something along those lines. So that would be probably on the realm of what the minimum would be.
Yeah, because during the discussions, it was, part of it was thoughts on it was, rather than take on another small park for the town to maintain, it'd be more effective and better, the citizens would be better served having the money we give a fee in lieu of, that we can use to either maintain current parks, upgrade current parks, or to purchase land that we can put a ball field on or something like that and do it that way versus spreading resources all over mowing grass.
Makes sense. But the min size is TBD,
Yes,
but generally speaking.
generally, I think.
An athletic field.
An
size.
athletic field size was, I think, what we were conceptually thinking.
That seems reasonable to me. At least then it has a more specific use case than just becoming another plot
Yeah.
of grass that has to be mowed.
The way the code is currently written, it's 7 acres per 1,000 residents. And so if you're doing and the formula, I think, was 3.5 bodies per residential lot. So it's a pretty big development to get to 7 acres, but if somebody's putting in 20 units someplace, it's a pretty small park. And has limited, in some respects, limited value to have another pocket park, and that's where the payment in lieu makes more sense, that then we can combine and have a larger tract of land for a different.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with trustee Brindle. I'd like to see that payment go into refurbishing and improving the parks we already have. I think that's a wise choice.
Unless it's some oddball parcel like a piped irrigation ditch where you can't do anything.
What do we do in those cases?
I guess that's another discussion.
That, we did discuss that. We talked about some of the open green space where developers are trying to fit as many possible lots into their parcel as they can. It leaves these green spaces or little pocket parks that then they want to turn around and try to dedicate to the town. But the town does not want to be responsible for that. That needs to go back on the HOAs to be responsible for.
So part of this matrix then will be that the land has to be contiguous.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Still, while we are on the town and parks discussion, where the 2024 CML community the CML meeting was held, it was actually a similar space to the Roy Moore space. So they had it very, very similar. I actually took a couple of pictures that I ended up sharing with Sheila, but when we have another meeting, we can bring it up and show to you guys. So it's just a space that they can use for open gym. In this case, they held the community league meeting. They had the local, similarly to High Water Farms, come in and cater the food. And they just had tables. It looks beautiful, the open space. And Jim Mann, the town manager, Sheila McIntyre, our town clerk, we were there and we were just having this amazing brainstorm discussion about how amazing it would be for Silt to utilize that space and to continue to push that conversation, because we could attract, so we even talked about maybe spelling bees, competitions, just having that open space with a little stage and have all kinds of different, very attractive events happening in there. So I have talked to our town manager that I really want for us to take that conversation ahead instead of having just a storage space, turn that into an asset for the town. So while we are in the subject and we're very much in agreement of that, and he said that you'd make that phone call for us and.
I will. And I know that there's been conversation in the past with the school district, they've been hesitant, but it's one of those things that would sure be nice to get it before it becomes dilapidated. And then they want to give it to us when we have to tear it down and start over. Whereas if we can get something that's usable space that we can maintain and keep it up versus letting it get run down and then, yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully, Mr. Mann's conversation will actually be better than, because for years and years and years, the town has tried to get that gym, and the school district's always said no. I mean, like, it's gone, two town administrators ago have been asking, and, we just haven't gotten there, so maybe you'll be the one.
He told her directly already.
Little wheeling and dealing perhaps?
Sure.
He communicated the intentions directly already. I want the gym, so.
It's just sad to have that space doing what it's.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it
it
is.
is such a great thing, like what we saw in Palisade was beautiful, they had the basketball court, that can be like an indoor volleyball. Where you can have volleyball leagues that can create so many different
I would be so
exciting
happy to hear
things.
that.
To have a place that we could hold
So,
sports stuff without having to wrestle with the school district's
Gym space.
schedules and everything
Yeah.
else, and, yeah.
so. Yeah.
Yeah, and
We'll do
it's
that.
full of storage for the school district. I mean, if they haven't used it in so many years, why do they still have the stuff, you know? I'm hoping the school district's listening to us because, do anything to spur some sort of conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because yes, I'm in agreement with all you. It would be a great asset to the town to have that building.
And to Jim Mann's point, even doing education related type of events like you had mentioned, that has an interest, a shared interest with the schools. And I just see a lot of synergy there where we can change the approach perhaps and highlight some of those points and really make that conversation being heard and taken into serious consideration.
Yep.
A lot of lives and kids,
With the growth in events,
it's-
with the growth in
will be
sports.
impacted positively.
Maybe there's a newfound opportunity to shift that dialogue.
And they've had changes in leadership recently, so maybe that provides a new opportunity too.
Yeah,
New
hopefully.
leadership in both positions can maybe have a different conversation.
There you go.
And I'm not saying it's not only against the town, because the Silt Historical Society has tried to talk to them about them giving the society the parking lot and where those rail cars are. And every time they've asked, they've been told no. So it's not just the town. It's, we need to somehow convince or coerce, the school district.
Collaboratively work together.
There we go, collaboratively work. Be using the word coerce.
Let us know how that goes.
Okay,
I will.
thank you.
Any other comments, questions on that topic? Okay. Next item on the agenda is the second reading of ordinance number 3, series 2024, an ordinance annexing to the town of Silt, Colorado, certain real property owned by Matthew and Susan Jermu and located west of County Road 231 in Garfield County, Colorado, known as the Lestadian Lutheran Church Annexation Development Agreement. Turn this over, planner Chain.
I'll have to change my introduction because I was going to start it out. Point of order, maybe we need to do another item before the scheduled public hearing. Anyway, Logan Jermu is here. He's the owner's representative, so they are being represented. I never like to have a hearing with someone, the applicant not here, or at least someone virtually. I didn't see anything virtually. Anyway,
Would you care
there-
to just move up here in case anybody has any questions, so that your answers are on the record? Thank you.
there are basically three, and can you, okay, am I going out over sound, Lori? Okay, all right. There are three matters here tonight, two public hearings, you've seen them before. One is the ordinance number 3, which is annexing the subject property. It's basically a housekeeping matter. We had it reading before. Ordinance number 4, which is zoning of the property, and then there's a third matter, which will be approving a resolution, which is essentially approving an annexation and development agreement. Now, we talked about the annexation agreement at the last meeting. You haven't seen it yet. It's with the packet. But we'll need 3 separate motions for these items. So let's go with number 1. So ordinance number 3, series of 2024. This is the second reading for annexing the property, basically a housekeeping matter. What was submitted, what are the procedures that have gone through, and what is being recorded with the county. And you had a reading at the last meeting, and at that time you unanimously approved ordinance number 3, series of 2024, which annexed the church property. Well, I'm calling it the church and the German property. I have no fancy presentation or anything else. It seemed non-controversial enough. I did not put the information in the packet again. But with that, I think it's time to open up the public hearing, unless Logan, you'd like to make a comment first.
Nothing additional. Thanks again, Planner Chain, for all your work in the project, and thank you for hearing our project this evening.
Any other board comments or questions?
I have nothing.
There's been no substantial changes, so it's pretty cut.
Okay, the time is now 7:24. I will open up a public hearing. Persons desiring to make public comments on this item, please activate the raise hand function in the meeting program. Or did we receive any voicemails?
We have received no voicemails, Mayor Pro Tem.
I have raised hands.
And there's no one else with us here in the chambers. Time is now 7:25, and I will close the public hearing and open it up to further board comments or a motion.
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance number 3, series 2024 is presented.
Second.
Motion by trustee Seifert to approve the second reading of ordinance number 3, series 2024 is presented, and that was seconded by trustee Britnall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, next is ordinance number 4, series of 2024. And this will be the initial zoning for the property, and you did see this at your last meeting. And the property is being proposed to go into the ag rural zone district. It's what the rest of the church property is zoned. And churches aren't allowed use in that zone district, and they're only allowed in 2 zone districts unless you go through a special review process. I have nothing to add. It seems pretty straightforward. And as I've noted before, not only did he have a unanimous first reading at the last meeting, but this was subject to a public hearing in front of the planning commission. As a matter of fact, 2 public hearings. And I think the zoning issues were resolved at that second hearing. And with that, I'd recommend that you approve the second reading, ordinance number 4, series of 2024. And Logan, any comment before you move on?
No further comment.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I have nothing.
So planner chain, no changes to the documentation between the first reading and the second? No edits, no updates?
None whatsoever.
Copy and paste.
Pardon?
It's a copy and paste.
No, I didn't even copy and paste. I just added a different memo to the front.
Okay, unless anybody has any other comments, I'll open up the public hearing. The time is now 7:27. I will open up the public hearing on the second reading of ordinance number 4, series 2024. Persons desiring to make public comment on this item on the agenda, please activate the raise hand function in the meeting program. Lori, did we have any voicemails or emails about this agenda?
We have had none. No voicemails or emails.
I do not show any raised hands.
Time is now 7:28 PM and I will close the public hearing and open it up to further board comments, questions, or a motion.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead.
All right, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, I would like to make a motion approving the second reading of ordinance 4, series 2024 as written.
Second.
Motion by trustee Clausen to approve the second reading of ordinance number 4, series 2024 is presented, seconded by trustee Brittenall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimous. Next item on the agenda is resolution 2022, series 2024, a resolution of the town of Silt approving the annexation and development agreement for the Lestadian Lutheran Church annexation number 2 within the town of Silt, Garfield County, state of Colorado. I will turn this back over to planner Chin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. And this is not a public hearing, by the way. Okay, but you're having new ground here because you are seeing the annexation and development agreement before you. We did discuss what should be in an annexation and development agreement for the property. And just for history, there was an annexation and development agreement with the first annexation back in 2012. There was also a utility plan, there was a landscape plan and a site plan. And we wanted to make sure that everything was in order, and Manager Centeno did meet with Darren Byman
Yes.
and the town engineer on the property. And just so you know, earlier in the process, when we were just talking about zoning, Manager Centeno went up with me and Trey to look at the property. And at that point, we were looking at the relationship between the neighborhood to the south, which is Mira Loma, and the church, but also to see if there was any possible drainage issues. We discussed that at the last meeting. Anyway, there are a few things that we have in this annexation and development agreement. And the first one, you've heard of all of them, I believe. The site plan review process. The neighbors and actually staff, after discussion, thought that whenever there is an expansion to the church property, and that could be for parking, it could be an expansion of an existing building, even if to the old building, it could be a new building on the property that's being annexed, or if they want to use it for, dedicated open space with a park area, something that is some kind of development, that should go through the town process, site plan review. And that, by the way, is a review by the planning commission, and the board of trustees is their decision-making if there's an appeal. So, we also want to make sure that things are clear with the water rights, that the water rights should be assigned to the property being annexed within 90 days of, I believe, the recording of the agreement and the annexation map, and that the property is watered appropriately. And then there are two other issues in looking at the landscape plan, actually up there on site. Some things with the original landscape plan were not completed, and that was basically related to the landscape islands in the parking lot. And they've agreed to complete those items. And then there was also an expansion of parking, that's a gravel parking area. And any gravel parking area there is actually supposed to be a paved parking. And how we decided to settle that was when they expand their parking, they needed to come into compliance and show where the new parking is, et cetera, et cetera. So those were the four things that were in the annexation agreement. Everything else is basically what you would see from the annexation and in any development agreement, basically making sure, weeds are under control and things like that. So you have not seen it before, but it's pretty straightforward, and it's not a public hearing. I have nothing else to add. And with that, I would like Logan, or give him the opportunity to address anything if you believe you need to.
No, I think you had it covered there, so no further comment from us. But willing to answer any questions if you may have any.
Questions?
I have no questions.
Entertain, you mentioned paving. And when the parking gets expanded, it will need to be paved, brought into compliance, as you phrased it. Will that include the existing parking area as well as the expanded area?
Well, the existing parking is paved, the majority of it.
I thought you said it was gravel.
Yeah.
Needs to be upgraded.
Landscaping in the existing area.
Yeah, they need to come into compliance with their existing landscaping plan. They had the agreement with the landscaping plan and just nobody ever followed up to make sure that it was completed. So they need to complete it now to come into compliance in order to qualify for this annexation. And so we'll make sure that within 6 months, we'll work with the applicant to make sure that they're in compliance.
Okay, so that's on your team,
Yes,
to help facilitate, make sure that gets done.
we're working together to make sure it gets done.
Great, thank you. So this isn't a public hearing, is it an action item? Do we need to have a motion and a second?
Yes, you need to adopt the resolution. I don't think you usually sign or adopt an agreement unless there is a resolution. Just those there's a housekeeping matter, so it's easy to track. Or easier to track.
Any other questions, concerns, or anybody want to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, make a motion to approve resolution number 22, series 2024 as presented.
I'll second.
We have a motion by trustee Seifert to approve resolution number 22, series 2024 as presented. And that was seconded by trustee Clausen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I apologize, I was late.
Oh,
I think there's a bat pole out there, and just swooped in. All right, so that the next item on the agenda is the establishment of a special purpose committee for strategic planning and town code committee. And I will turn this over to Manager Mann.
All good deeds do not go unpunished. With the housing needs assessment in that process, and a variety of other planning items that we have, as well as other code changes, I feel it would be beneficial if we were to create a subcommittee of the board that would be responsible for doing a lot of the heavy lifting to do this work, rather than have it all come to the board all the time and extend these meetings. So we had suggested that you create a subcommittee that would be responsible for updates to the town code, the comprehensive plan, and the financial management plan that Treasurer Tucker and I are working on currently. And it would be the first sounding board, basically, before documents would get to the council or the town board.
And just so that I'm clear, is it one committee or two? The way that it's phrased makes it
It's
look
just
like
one
it's two.
committee,
It is one committee that encompasses both. Got it.
yes.
I volunteer.
Yeah.
If we don't have. the
So-
other thing.
I volunteer too.
First and foremost, you need to create the committee and then figure out who's gonna sit on the committee.
But we can do both in one
And you can
session.
do both in one meeting, and, you know, internally, we had the discussion of whether you would want to add an outside member from the community. One of the questions has always been, how do we get more people engaged in the community? And this might be an opportunity to pull somebody in from the outside that could sit on a committee and help do some of this heavy lifting. Now, that being said, we have a vacancy for one of the trustee positions, which we haven't received any applications for. We still have a position on the Vale board. So we haven't necessarily had the greatest track record of getting people from the outside, but it would be an opportunity for you to add somebody outside of the board of trustees to serve on a committee.
Did you fill the P and Z? Was there anybody in the P and Z?
We have not filled it yet, but there was one applicant.
Was,
And you will be receiving a trustee's applicant. I have it on good authority.
Okay, well, we will hopefully get that.
I will double check with them. Would we be wise to have someone from P and Z on the committee as well?
I think it would be beneficial.
I think a P and Z person especially would be
Yeah.
great.
Just because their familiarity with the code.
Yep.
Strategic planning.
Well, and it helps the liaison process of going back to the P and Z if somebody's had a hand in some of this,
That was my
you
thing.
know, so there's a good communication going back and forth.
so you're talking like one from P and Z, maybe one from town and one from the board then, or?
It could be two from the board, it could be one from P and Z and one from the town. And
Well, we had
then
two
there'll be,
volunteers
you know,
from the
staff
board, I heard,
involved as well.
volunteers, so they both want to volunteer to be great.
Yes,
Yes,
Happy
yes,
to
I won't.
And volunteers are definitely
I know, I
valuable.
was-
I was gonna offer to volunteer as well, but it sounds like it sounds like we're playing musical chairs. Now the music just stopped and we're a chair short.
nope, nope.
And
It's
Andrea's like,
yours.
I will,
I've got
she
mine
needs
on my
Cindy
plate.
here.
Yes.
I've been
please.
voluntold.
Okay, there you go.
Sorry.
Okay, well, the first thing we need to do, this is an action item, so we would need to approve the creation of the committee. And then subsequent to that, is everyone here okay if we just cover the nomination and approval of board member participation as well as P and Z representation as well? That's a bit of an agenda change. I apologize if that's on the fly, but
Or do we want to talk to P and Z first and make sure they're, well, they want it before we even. vote on
we
this?
could offer it to them as saying, hey, we'd love to have someone on this committee. Can anyone do it?
But I mean,
Yeah.
before we vote on this, it's up to them first, and then see, then bring it back as one item that you got P and Z and whatever, I don't.
If they say no, we'll just reappoint Andrew.
Well, we could, well,
Yeah.
that, you have to be
Okay.
careful if you, well, I mean, you could do that, but then each of those meetings would have to be noticed to the public because it'd be more than two board members. Whereas if you have the two, where you can set up with having the two board members and then other potential participants could be A, B, C, and D, and then we can go from there and then work out.
We definitely have P and Z members that would be interested.
Yeah, I'm sure, yeah.
You're
you would.
confident that someone would step
One
up?
hundred percent, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
100%.
I've been asked about it already.
one person or two people?
We have two people that would be interested.
Which would be
There we go.
So between the two of them, one of them
Would always be, somebody would be there, yeah.
If you want an odd number, you could have two members of the P and Z.
Yeah.
Not that I think that there are going to be formal actions taken by that body. It's more of a discussion sounding board. Committee.
Well, it's just nice, it's similar to like with the Parks and Rec, where we're able to sit and have a 2-hour conversation about something, bring it to this meeting and have it be a 15-minute discussion versus a 2-hour discussion here.
Correct.
Does
It'd be a
Parks and
similar
Rec
process.
committee have a P and Z member on it?
Or,
That's a conversation that, we, Director Centeno and I have had, that we should get a member of the P and Z on Park and Rec.
Sorry, I didn't mean to change the sentence.
No,
I was just curious.
If we have 2 volunteers for one committee,
I think one of
Maybe
them
be able
will
to divide
steer
them.
towards the Parks and Rec, because that's more along the lines of,
Yeah.
extracurricular activities that are involved.
then how about we establish the committee this evening with 2 prospective volunteers? Well, give you a chance to talk with P and Z's that next week.
Tuesday, yeah.
And then at the next meeting of the Board of Trustees, we can formalize the membership in the committee.
Perfect,
Does that
That
sound?
works, yeah.
perfect.
This is an action item. Does somebody want to make a motion? Or does anybody have any other comments or questions about the subject?
Mayor Pro Tem, I make a motion, to establish a special purpose committee for strategic planning and town code committee, which will assign the participants, following this meeting.
second,
Okay, we have a motion by trustee Poston to establish a special purpose committee for the purposes of strategic planning and town code committee. That was seconded by trustee Brightnall. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Excess volunteers, it's rare, but it happens. It's like Christmas once a year.
Something magical going on.
Yes.
Next item on the agenda is the April 2024 financial report. I will turn this over to Treasurer Tucker.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. This is for the month of April. 33% of the year has passed. We are doing well with our projections as far as our sales tax and our use tax. Sales tax is at 34% and use tax is at 41%. We are in line with our trash service fees, wastewater service fees, irrigation fees, and water service fees. And our revenues are in line for most of our funds. Beautification is a little down, but we have some lodging that doesn't like to turn theirs in on a monthly basis. And our budgeted revenues for the water fund is down just because we have not gotten reimbursements for the water treatment plant. Our expenditures are in line. The Conservation Trust and the Victims Assistance and the construction impact are above where we thought we would be, but we will stay under what you appropriated for this budget season, and I'll answer any questions you may have.
So reading this, we're down about 4% on sales tax then for the year. Is that right? Is that the decrease 3.8? That's
Compared to last year.
Yeah.
For the 4 months total.
Yeah.
Yes. But we are at 34% of what we thought we would get. So we're still ahead of what we thought our revenues were going to be. But as of right now, we are lower than our revenues for April.
So
January.
Amy, for sales tax, for purchases, for online purchases, as long as the items are being delivered within Silt's address, we get to collect those revenues, right? So
That is correct.
not pick up orders, but orders that are made online, on your couch, at your home, and the items are being delivered in your house, then we take advantage of that sales revenue.
Correct. Even if you order from Walmart while you're sitting on your couch, but you go pick it up in Rifle, Rifle gets that sales tax.
Okay, so that's the caveat. So if you order online and you go pick up at another place, that revenue, it's not captured.
It is not
So-
captured here, no.
Okay, so the focus is online purchases, in sale, delivered to sale, we capture the revenue.
Yes,
And that gets placed back on projects for the town, for the sale, for sale.
Correct.
Yeah, you order Amazon, they tack it on right away. It's sales tax right there.
Any other comments, questions about the numbers?
No, everything was good. Thank you, Treasurer Tucker.
you're welcome.
Yeah, the pattern of sales tax seems to fit the post-pandemic pattern where it dips a little in the spring, but then it rebounds in the summer, so it's just reinforcing that that's the new sort of annualized economic model for sales tax. Wonder if it's because people pay taxes at that time of year.
Could be.
Maybe we reduce our spending consciously or subconsciously because of it being taxing.
Pay the federal government this year, so.
Okay, thank you, Treasurer Tucker.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, administrator and staff comments. Now I'll turn this over to Manager Mann.
I really don't have anything to add to what I put together and had in the packet. But I would just emphasize that when we do have the opportunity to do CML meetings, that I would encourage all of you to attend. It's a great, not only networking opportunity, but it's also a very good way to, you know, for CML to tell us what they're doing on our behalf with State House. We had a pretty good update in terms of legislation that was approved. I will tell you that there will be initiatives on the fall ballot for property taxes and the assessment rate. They just people can't stop themselves from wanting to monkey around with that assessment ratio. And it's unfortunate, but it makes our lives a little bit more difficult when it comes to actually doing the budget, because we just don't know exactly what's gonna be there, but beyond that, I don't have anything to add.
It sounds like Family Dollar is re-engaging in getting those doors unlocked.
Yes. We are hoping to have a TCO out to them by Thursday.
Really?
Mhm.
Thanks.
That's our goal.
Red tags work.
They do. Ish.
Ish.
Yeah, but they're temporary. How long is that for?
We would give them, depending on what's remaining out of the work that they need to do, either a 30 or 60-day TCO. And then after that point, they're gonna have to put up a bond for the work that still needs to be completed in order to get their temporary certificate of occupancy. And then if they don't complete it within the amount of time, then we will complete it for them and take their bond.
Any other comments from any other staff members? Joe, any updates on anything?
Oh, I do have one update. They're starting to bore the other way. They've got their casing in over on the frontage road. They're getting ready to come over on the other side. Connect the two pipes. So keep going right, moving right along.
Can you remind me, when is that expected to be completed?
It's end of July. So they picked up this pace the last couple of weeks. They're not hand filling anymore, they're augering.
Oh, nice.
That's always helpful.
Yeah.
Not have to do it by hand. Thank you for that update. Next item on the agenda, updates from board and board comments. I'll start with trustee Poston.
Okay, in conjunction to our managers' comments on the community municipal league event, it was the district meeting that was held in Palisade. We had Grand Junction, City of Fruta, Silt, am I leaving? and Cedar Junction, Fruta, Silt, and Palisade. And we met with some of the community leaders, town employees, and we had some of the representatives, trustees and mayors. To town manager's comment, it is a really great opportunity to go out there, have those conversations and being exposed to what those other communities are doing as far as projects goes. And it was exciting to be there talking about Silt and representing Silt as a visionary, diverse community, being that irresistible little town that we are. And thanks to Sheila and G-Man for being there and giving that support, we were able to give some updates on some of the projects that we have going on. And some of the priorities that are highlighted, it is the affordable housing bill that is being approved this week. And earlier on, we had a discussion about it. So Silt is very much in tune with what's going on there. But they also brought up civility, how civility in all parts of government and out in society, everywhere. It's something that just needs to be addressed. I'm constantly very proud of the relationship that we uphold here with this board. We are able to speak up our minds, to voice our opinions and have respectful, mindful conversations. And I would like to enhance what was said by the Community Municipal League by saying more of this behavior will allow us to continue to be able to express our opinions freely and have those great discussions. So words that come to mind are trust, respect, understanding, and cooperation. I want to say thank you to the town staff for the hard work, welcoming our new town manager and all the work that he has ahead of him, and he's doing an amazing job, as well as each one of the employees that are here in the town of Silt. I want to thank the Board of Trustees. It was nice to hear the CML coming up with this as a priority, and even having feedback from other neighboring community leaders that they hear about us. They hear about us being a sound board, and it's nice to be out there in the community and hear that other community leaders are listening to that message. So yes, it's very much so leading by example. It's not telling people what to do, but doing it ourselves. That's what makes America, a great country, is what we do each and every day, is the way we treat each other, and the way that we keep projects moving forward and making dreams happen. So that's all I have.
Trustee Brennan.
One of the big things, we've talked in the past, has been brought up about the horseshoe pits that are available, open now. On Sunday afternoons, they do tournaments up there. Even if people aren't interested in playing in the tournament because you haven't pitched much, or you're not interested in learning and just kind of see what's going on, go up there, hang out, see what's going on. So there's several pairs of shoes available. People let you borrow shoes, or the group people that play up there they love the sport, and they're really good, welcoming to share with new people. And there's usually open pits that aren't being used for the tournament that are available just for people to learn and practice and whatnot until you want to join in.
May I just add something? I forgot. Movie at the Park. Come join us in Silt for Movie at the Park. It's a lot of fun. The first one will be on the 7th. So come on out, join us, and let's have some fun.
Trustee Brennan.
Sorry.
There we go.
Trustee Clausen.
I had a couple of questions. I guess the first one I had was the Public Works Director position. There was an ad out, correct?
We did an internal ad.
Oh, okay.
We have held interviews, and a decision has not been made as of yet that we can communicate.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah, I was just curious on that, so. Cliffhanger, yeah, cliffhanger. And I was curious, the food trailers, the tents they have do they meet all the snow and wind loads and everything? And I only asked that because I saw it in the P and Z minutes.
Yeah.
For one of them.
They do some of them, they're, that's on our code, violation list for our, code enforcement is to get information from the pre-existing non-conforming food trucks, because those are popping up without permits. And so they do require for a temporary, per the IBC, or the International Building Code, there is a requirement for a permit for a temporary structure, and those are considered temporary structures. So they do have to meet wind and snow load. Or they can get the temporary and it can be up just for the summer months when they're not gonna have to meet snow load, but they will still have to meet wind load.
Oh, okay, all right.
So we're working on that. All of the ones that have come in front of, the planning and zoning for a site plan review have met what they needed to.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Our compliance officer has swung by to say hi to them and to remind them about the compliance of the temporary structures.
Yes,
Nice.
that is all, that is on his list. I don't know if he's made contact with everybody yet, but it is on the list.
That's what he's here for.
Nice,
It is.
Fantastic.
nice. And have we heard anything about the freed up storage? In terms of them wanting water from the town?
Yes, they're in the process of submitting an application. I talked to them Thursday afternoon, and they're definitely in a hurry to put a rush on it. But they have questions about what all the application needed to entail. So they're working on that.
So where are they gonna get water from?
They're gonna propose to get it get out of town.
But I mean, where are they gonna cross? Where are they gonna get it?
They're looking at sleeving it under the interstate. They're looking at meeting the requirements that we set forth, that our engineer set forth to go under the interstate, to bore into the interstate.
Oh, that's nice, because we were gonna do it and they wouldn't let us do it.
They have two options. They can,
Or
or
we come backwards from the other way, can't they, from Kelly's, from the subdivision, and come back behind Aunt Nellie's?
they'll start at right there in front of the hotel in that vacant lot and bore to the north. But the requirements are that they sleeve it for, in case there's a problem in the future, we can replace the line. Or they have the option of going to the water line behind Randy Murs and tying it on there. So they have two options.
Because we were gonna come in with Dave Moore, we were gonna do it way back when, and they wouldn't let us sleeve. They said we could come in from behind Larry, from over in the cul-de-sac there, you know, by the post office. They come in behind Larry and Nellie's across that field, and get water from there. That was, well, we were gonna do that 10, 12 years ago, and they wouldn't.
When you say they wouldn't, who's they?
State.
Okay, when you say they, I just wanted to clarify who you were talking about.
How did we,
Trustees.
how
Yeah, I
things
just-
changed,
I-
because they were gonna allow them just.
So I just, that's why I didn't know, because that was our option, was to come in behind Larry's field and come from the post office, or that back in that corner.
Yeah, the state has changed.
They did.
They were gonna let them just drag an HDPE pipe through there without it being encased. The town wants that, but CDOT would.
Yeah, the state was willing to accept it, the town is not, because that is gonna have to be dedicated over to the town once it's done, and we don't want to mess with cleanup. That's.
So then they're gonna cross there, then which way are they gonna go? They're gonna cross. Where are they gonna run it to get to there?
It'll, where they're boring under the highway, it would tie right into their property, right where their existing line is. They've already put in their infrastructure on.
They would come by between
It would be,
existing and the swamp along that.
no, it would be about, I'd say about 400 feet to the west of 16th Street where they would enter their property.
They still gotta come through. They don't have no right of way to Highway 6.
They don't have to go through Highway 6.
Was that, you said they're gonna bore under,
They're
Thanks,
on going to interstate,
oh, they're coming from the other direction.
other stretch.
Oh, the one that goes out to Coleridge, is what that,
Yes.
that's when they're gonna tie into?
Yes,
Cause see, we were gonna come on Highway 6, we're across by the restaurants, we were gonna bore under that way and then over. 2 hours and Dave Moore's. And at that time, it was Silt Street, or the county, the state wouldn't let us bore under Highway 6. That's why we were gonna come in from behind the other way, so.
From a process standpoint, this will go through P and Z first,
No, it'll come to the board.
straight to the board of trustees.
Unless you all want it to go in front of P and Z for a recommendation, but the out of town taps typically come through to the board.
I don't know enough about the situation to have an opinion either way, but if anybody who's more knowledgeable about these matters does have an opinion, I'd appreciate hearing it. Should it go through P and Z?
Well, if they're just coming to the town asking for an out of town water tap, then I don't feel it needs to go to P and Z, because it's already gone through Garfield County's P and Z and building permits and everything, so it's already been approved. They're only asking us.
It's really a policy decision of the board.
So they're just wanting it for a fire hydrant, is what they want?
Fire suppression, I believe they have.
Fire suppression, yeah, cause they got, the new building has to be.
Yes.
Yes.
Doesn't it have something to do with the water evaporation, being out of town, tracking, or am I going totally off track on this? When we do, like out of the town taps,
It's just serving out of,
yeah, okay, because.
yeah, it's just increased fees to service. That's kind of our incentive to tie on to water and sewer in the town. Is to encourage people to annex into the town. And then they'll get water and sewer.
So they tie into this, they're tying into the sewer as
They're
well, so they're
tying
tying into both.
Got it.
They're just
Okay.
trying, they're doing water, not sewer.
Correct.
Yeah, they're just tying into the water. They have conditioned storage units.
For sprinkler systems. if they're gonna have-
But it's not, it wouldn't be much water usage, if, I mean, hopefully they never use it at that point.
Yeah, they just put a hydrant and sprinkle it in.
Yeah.
If it's all for fire suppression, hopefully they don't ever use a drop, they just pay for our water taps and that's it.
Yeah, and then,
Even more questions, trustee Costa?
yeah, it's not necessarily a question, but you know, because like the Home Avenue project, for example. You know, I mean, we approve it and everything, you know, but we don't necessarily see the plans and the public doesn't necessarily see the plans either. So I didn't know if there's some way we could put the plans to those projects on the website. So if the public hears, oh, they're redoing Home Avenue, what are they doing? They could at least, I'm not saying in
Yeah.
detail, but just some overview so people know what's going on when they hear us approving these things.
Ultimately, we're going to be revamping the entire website, and it would be my hope that we would start putting plans like that onto the website, that would be easily findable and searchable and viewable.
Have a drop down site where you can do any plans or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
Let me know when you form that committee.
I was looking at you.
There we go.
But anytime
What do you
there's-
think? You didn't get the memo, you are the committee.
It's a committee of one.
Yeah.
Trustee Costa, anything else?
The only other thing I have is, do we need to talk to people about, you know, someday, you know, we're gonna have this beautiful pedestrian bridge over the interstate. Do we need to try to start acquiring land now, or do we hold off, or what should we do?
They put a trailer up where we were gonna buy, so.
We should be trying to acquire the land now.
We have conversations with people.
Yeah.
We need to have those conversations now.
Yeah, I just don't, yeah.
Yeah.
Don't know if we need to start or.
That's a great point.
And that's everything. Good job, staff. Thank you, Mr. Mann, for being here with us.
Yeah, cause you gotta have the land at both ends before we can approve, go to,
Can't build something if you don't have the land.
yeah, they won't even talk to you about it, right, or anything, so, okay. Until finish the thing. I have nothing. I'm good.
A couple of things from me, a couple of thank yous. Thank you to Cactus Valley Elementary School. I got to be a science fair judge, which will surprise no one, that it was incredibly fun and exciting to see young people do cool science projects. One of the winning projects, what was it? Bacterial symbiosis from a fifth grader. Very impressive, a whole bunch of great projects, but that one stood out to me, mostly because of the big words. Thank you to Tony Marie, who's the teacher who kind of runs the whole project. Also had a great discussion with Principal Kelly, just generally about how does what we are doing in the town impact the school? And she had many thoughts, but we weren't able to get through them all. So I'm hoping to have a follow-up discussion with her. Not that we control what they do, but again, it's what we do is adjacent to what they're doing. So I think there is an impact. And when we talk about things like affordable housing, in particular, if they're having trouble hiring people, the number one reason is affordable housing. So things like that. I'm looking forward to that continued discussion with her. Second, I went to the ribbon cutting for the Mine Springs Detox Center in Glenwood Springs last Thursday.
Yes.
Great to see a lot of people there from a lot of different communities, to see some of Mine Springs leadership, in addition to a lot of folks who worked very hard on the project. Commissioner Sampson was there, which was great to see. I know they just provided a written vote of confidence for the Mine Springs leadership. To remind everyone, it's going to be a 9-bed facility. It's the projected opening. They still have to move in some furniture and some equipment and other related items. But the current projected opening day for the facility is June 17th. One of the things I also spoke with Amy Cooper, who's the director of the facility. She's going to be inviting local fire and local police to go and take a tour of the facility and see exactly what the space is and how they do what they do. The intent is to get the local resources that will utilize it or make the decision about where to take people, to give them more familiarity with the services they provide, which I thought was a great idea. Familiarity breeds comfort, right?
Yep.
The other item related to that is they are going to keep the governance committee that I was a member of during the construction and the project phase. They want to keep that up and running as an accountability mechanism. So if it's okay with everyone here, I will volunteer to stay on that committee.
Sure.
And I talked with Amy, again, Amy Cooper, the director, about a schedule of events or meetings, how often they should happen, some data points that I at least would be interested in, and some other people from the governance committee were also there. So we're trying to build a schedule and details about the usage of the facility so that we know what they're doing going forward. So if everyone's okay with that, I'll keep doing that. That's it for me. With that, the last item on the agenda is adjournment.
Mr. Mayor, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by trustee Seaver to adjourn, seconded by trustee Brindle. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.